but I pretty much grew up down at my granddaddy's house. I mean, he lived right there, and I'd ride my bike or motorcycle or whatever down there, and my responsibility was to feed the cows, you know. So I'd feed the cows after school. So when I get home from school, I just, you know, change clothes, put my boots on. I'd go to his house and I'd go feed the cows, and then I'd help him, you know, do whatever he needed to do. When I was in, I don't know, probably middle school, probably from the time, I don't know, 12, 13 years old till, you know, I graduated high school and left and went to Delta State. During the winter, we had, well, he grew corn. He had a cornfield. So at the, you know, time of harvest time, we'd get the corn in the corn wagon, bring it up to the barn, and then we would, he had a grinder. So we'd get all the corn from the corn crib, shovel it into the grinder, and it would go into the where we kept the feed. So every day I would go down, get the buckets of feed, and I just go through there and just, you know, just shake out the feed and to feed the cows. I remember him saying, you know, you can tell a lot by a man's hands, you know, and his hands, he had the thickest hands I've ever seen, I think, just because of what he did. You know, he was messing with cows all day. He was messing with he was doing fencing, you know, and just doing that kind of stuff. But just working, you know, using his hands all day long. He had the strongest hands I'd ever seen, and they were just so thick, and you know, just because he used his hands all the time, and his grip strength, and that's big in baseball. You know, gripping the bat, gripping the baseball, being able to throw, just having strength in your hands and your forearms. I think that may have helped me out. You know, carrying buckets of feed. You know, helped me gain that kind of strength in my hands and forearms. All right, as far back as I can remember, I think my dad pretty much was the one that got me kind of on to baseball. Every Sunday afternoon after church, we would have, there'd be softball games down in the pasture. I think watching my dad play kind of got me onto the game a little bit, and then I just took to it, and I loved it. My sister was 2 years younger than I was, and we would always go out and throw the ball in the yard and that kind of thing. But if she wasn't around, I grew up in a brick house, so, and there were bushes on either side, there were hedges on either side, and windows of mine and her bedroom. So there was a spot in the middle that was perfect for throwing a baseball off of. So anytime that she wasn't around, I would go outside with I would just go outside with the ball in my glove, and I would just throw the ball up against the side of the house. And I would sometimes I'd act like I was playing shortstop. You know, I'd throw the ball up against the house, and I'd field the ground ball, and I'd act like I was throwing it to first base. And there were a few occasions where, you know, my throw was a little bit off, and I broke out several windows, mine and my sister's windows. They had to be replaced a few times, but that's one thing I remember about growing up. You know, being at home. You know, if I didn't have somebody to play with, I'd go outside and just throw the ball up against the side of the house. The first team I can remember playing on, and I brought that picture, was the field house. It was a t-ball team that Mr. Bull Spencer coached. He had the field house, which was a sports store. I think it was it was down where Sappington's is now, back, you know, kind of close to where Sappington's is now. And that was my first, I think it may have been my first t-ball team. And we played down behind the high school. It was West Schooler Field. And I think that's the earliest memory I have of playing, you know, like an organized game, which was t-ball then. The West Schooler Field was down there behind. And then you had the, you know, they had the fast pitch or Little League field up where the parking lot is now by the high school. And then the old high school field, which I never played on, was down where the practice football field is now. And it was really cool if you could hit it over the fence, because the train track's back there. And you'd hear stories all the time of guys, younger kids, or hitting it over the fence, hitting it to the railroad track. That was my goal.
Yeah.
Be able to hit it to the railroad track. Bull Spencer was my coach. He was he was just, if there was anything sports related going on in New Albany, Mr. Bull was around. He always had a chair in the basketball games at the gym. He would have a chair sitting down there on the, this end of the court where you come in the gym. He had his chair sitting on the court down there below the goal. But it was Mr. Bull and Mr. Tom. Mr. Tom was a big sports fan too. He and my Uncle Bob, they got to be big buddies, and they could tell stories all day long. But they were big buddies. Anything going on in town, Mr. Bull was there. If it was basketball, if it was football, if it was baseball, you would always see Mr. Bull there, and he was probably the biggest supporter of New Albany sports when I was growing up. Bull Spencer Award was the top athlete, I think, in high school. If I can remember right, my buddy Ross Barkley was the one that got the Bull Spencer Award. He was, which he went on to play football at Ole Miss. He was a receiver and the kicker for the high school team. I don't know that there was one person that kind of pushed me. As far back as I can remember, that's all I wanted to do. As when I wanted to play professional baseball. I can remember back in, I don't remember if it was 5th or 6th grade, it was home ec class, and my aunt, Shara Owen, was the teacher. And I still have the report that she made us she had us do a report on, what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I wrote my report on, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. And I think I still have that somewhere at home. But as far back as I can remember, that's pretty much what I had set out, what I had set in my mind that I was going to do was be a big league ball player. And, I was blessed with, talent and ability to do that. I just didn't realize how much work and sacrifice and time it was going to take for that to be to come true. As I got a little bit older, the sportsplex was being built, and I think it was Mr. Walter Johnson, who was the mayor then. That was one of his big things, is he was wanting for the town of New Albany. And I think I was maybe 12, 13 years old when we played the first game there. They had only finished, I think, they only finished one field at the time, and they were working on the other fields, but we were able to play, I think it was like I said, I was 12 or 13 on an all-star team. And I forget the team we were playing, but anyway, I was the first one to hit a home run at the sportsplex, which was pretty cool for me. Just being that it had just, we just started playing on that field, and back then there was nothing around like that. Nowadays they're all over the place, those complexes like that. But back then that was the first sportsplex or first group of fields where everybody could come play and come play together. So that was a pretty cool moment for me, being the first one to hit a home run. Say you want to be a professional athlete, and the chances are really slim. And they're really slim for baseball players, because there's so many teams and there's so many players out there that there's just a very small percentage of players that actually get drafted or sign a professional contract. There's a very small percentage that actually ever play one day in the big leagues. And you're told that from the time you play t-ball until the time that you're drafted by a major league team or signed with a major league team, that there's a very small percentage or a very small chance that you're ever going to make it to the big leagues. And I realized that, and I thought about that, but at the same time, there is that small chance, and then, why can't I be that somebody? There's 30 guys in a room, and maybe one guy out of those 30 ever gets to play in the major leagues. Well, why can't I be that one guy? Somebody's it's going to be somebody. They have to make a roster, and they have to have 25 or 26 guys on the roster. So why can't I be one of those 25 or 26 guys? And I think that going to when I got to Delta State, I kind of realized that, and realized how hard it was going to be for that dream to come a reality, just because of the amount of time and effort and hard work it was going to take for me to even be able to compete at the collegiate level, And but I think that from Coach Mike Kennison, he was my coach at Delta State, and I think that was one of the things that he kind of instilled in us was our work ethic. Nobody was going to outwork us, so there was never going to be any doubt when we got on the field with another team that they outworked us. So we were as prepared or better prepared than they were. So, why can't we go out there and win the game or put our best effort out there? But at the same time, that personally, for myself, I think back and think that I'm going to put in as much work or more work, and work as hard or harder than anybody as anybody else. So why can't that be me on that team, or making that roster, or being that one person or that 1% that does make it to the big leagues? Because there's so many negatives, and so many. The guy, just like the guy, I'm kind of skipping ahead, but the guy behind you, he's fighting just as hard for your job, once you do make it to the big leagues, so it's just a constant battle, and you just got to continue to work. Well, I can remember growing up, or making it to high school, and trying to play as a freshman when you make it to the high school team, and I can remember Josh Foreman. He was like you're saying, he's the biggest guy on the team. He's got a full grown man beard, pretty intimidating, and he was only a year older than I was, a year or two, and just those guys, Chad Williams, the Kellys, PJ, Michael Kelly. I think Michael had graduated, but PJ was there. Kind of those guys, like you're saying, you look up to, because they're obviously older, and are they're good at baseball, and where you see yourself, or you're wanting to be, the next year, next couple years, or playing in your high school days. But I can remember those guys. Justin Hollis, we were the same age, and we played from t-ball on up together. His dad, my dad were coaches, or it was, they were our coaches during summer ball and growing up together. John Moffitt, Brett Owen, Jody Walls, those guys that, we played together growing up. We played together in summer ball. We played together, me and Justin, we went to Pontotoc and played senior legion ball. But just those guys, and those were good times, Like you're saying, now you play with the same guys. Back in those days, you played pretty much from t-ball on up with the same group of players. Nowadays, there's so many travel teams that guys are playing from. They may play with one team, and then one season, then they go to another team and play another season, or the next fall, or whatever. But those were the core guys that I pretty much played with, growing up from t-ball on up through high school. When I was growing up, we played park commission, t-ball, coach pitch, fast pitch, pony league. So you played your park commission season, which was maybe 10, 12, 14 games, whatever. And then after the season was over, the coaches would select an all-star team. And that all-star team would play, they'd play a few more games. So I was fortunate enough to be selected on the all-star team every year, and I got to continue playing throughout the summer. Or the teams that were in our division at the time were really good baseball schools. Amory, Pontotoc, Ripley, all those teams had really good baseball programs at the time, and had really good players. And we just were never able to take that next step, I think, through in my high school career, just to be able to make it to the playoffs, because I don't think we ever made it to the playoffs when I was in high school. But coming out of high school, I really did not have a school to go to. I wanted to go to a 4-year. I didn't want to go to a junior college. I wanted to go to a 4-year school. And I had been on a visit. I took an official visit to Mississippi State, and it was kind of coming close to the draft, and they were supposed to have some money freed up for me to go, scholarship money for me to be able to, to go to Mississippi State. I never heard back from them, so I was playing summer ball for Pontotoc Legion, and the coach from Delta State, which I had never heard of Delta State University. I didn't know where it was, didn't know where Cleveland, Mississippi was. I'd never heard of Cleveland, Mississippi. But we were playing a summer league or a summer ball game in Batesville, and Coach Kennison had come to the game, and I was playing shortstop that day. He came and watched me play. And then I took a visit down over to Cleveland. I liked the campus over there, and it was a 4-year school. It was a Division II school. So I signed up, and I went to Delta State and played at Delta State. Not knowing anybody there, not really knowing Coach Kennison. I got to know him a little bit through the recruiting process, but I took off to Cleveland in 98. I graduated in 98, and then following that summer, I went the fall of 98 to Delta State. He was big on our grades, which we had to keep a certain grade point average to be able to continue to be on the team, and keep our scholarship. Which, looking back now, I wish I would have taken my schoolwork a little bit more seriously, But at the time, I had baseball on my mind, and not saying I didn't make good grades there, but I wish I would have concentrated just a little bit harder on my books. But Coach Kennison had the biggest impact on the biggest impact on my baseball career. I don't know that if I would not have gone to Delta State, I would ever made it to the big leagues, just because of the work ethic that he instilled in us. He was the catching coach, so I worked with him every single day, and it was tough. From our fall workouts up into the last game of the season, we worked our tail off, and like I said before, there was never going to be any doubt that anybody worked any harder than we did. I think the reason I became a catcher was just because I thought the gear was cool when I was growing. Growing up, you play t-ball, and then you play coach pitch, and then you play fast pitch, and you got to have a catcher. So our team was looking for a catcher and asked if anybody had ever caught. The coach asked if anybody had ever caught, and I had never caught, but I thought the gear was cool, and you were kind of in the action at all times, So I strapped it on, and I got back there, and I pretty much never left back from behind the plate. There were a few times I moved around a little bit in high school. I played a little bit of third base. I played a little shortstop in summer ball, but I got back behind the plate, and I took to it, and I loved it, just because I was in the action at all times, The pitcher and the catcher are always in the action, So that's where I wanted to be. My first year in high school, I played football. I played football in junior high, and then I got to high school, and I played football my first year. and I think I ended up quitting it was either after my freshman year or after summer practice. I can't remember exactly the time I quit playing, and then after that, I played soccer in high school my last 3 years. My sophomore, junior, and senior years in high school, I played soccer, and I was the goalkeeper. Pretty fitting, I guess. Well, being a catcher is obviously pretty physically demanding. I mean, you're up and down, you're squatting 9 innings, 3 hours a game. You're taking foul balls, off your chest, off your legs, off your face. You're blocking the ball. You're trying to keep the ball in front of you. And then it's also mentally demanding too. You can go up there and you strike out 3 times a game, but you're still supposed to go out there and be, calling the game for the pitcher. So you can't let what's going on at the plate affect what's your work behind the plate. So it's not only physically demanding, it's mentally demanding. You got to be mentally tough to kind of overcome those things. You got to keep your legs strong, just to take some of the pressure off your knees, just because you're up and down all the time. But like I said before, it's what I wanted to do, and I could not see myself playing any other position, just for the fact that being in the action and the relationship you have with your pitcher, it comes into play. So I just took to it, and I loved it, and I just loved being in the action at all times. That the relationship you have with your pitcher is unique with each pitcher that you have on your staff. Sometimes you have a guy out there that kind of needs, he needs you to kind of, be there for him, and then other times you need to kind of kick him in his rear a little bit to get him going. That's just kind of the relationship you build with each pitcher, and that starts from, talking about pro ball, that starts in spring training, and it kind of carries throughout the season, kind of knowing each pitcher and knowing their tendencies and what they do and what they feel comfortable with is kind of that pitcher catcher relationship. It's I think it's more of a trust factor. I think of guys that I caught, and obviously most of the time the catcher is calling the game in the big leagues and in pro ball, but just building that relationship and building that trust, and that's, like I said, that starts in spring training. It just catching they throw bullpens, and that's their practice session, and you being back there and catching that, because that's a lot of the catcher's work in spring training is catching the guys' bullpens or their practice, and that's where you kind of build that relationship and that trust. Going back talking about guys I like to catch, one was Matt Cain, and another was Ryan Vogelsong. They were both guys that trusted me, and anytime I put a sign down, they weren't shaking me off. They didn't want another pitch. They had enough trust in me to know that I knew them well enough, and I knew the hitters well enough to know that whatever I put down, I had put thought into. I wasn't just sitting back there behind the plate putting down fingers. So they were always fun guys to catch, because they had total trust in me to call their game, and they would get a sign, and the pitch was coming. I did a lot of studying, which for me, I was more of a defensive-minded catcher. When I was in the big leagues, they say a catch and throw guy, but to be one of those, you need to know. You need to know your staff. You need to know the scouting reports, and those types of things can be overwhelming. but because there's so much information. But at the same time, that kind of goes with the territory. You know, I took pride in that. You know, knowing the hitters, knowing their tendencies. But when you play and you're in the league for a couple years and you're around the guys and you're playing the same teams in the same division, you kind of get to know the hitters and know their tendencies, and I always kept my own little book, and I would go to after the game. If I saw certain things, I would write down, you know, just so I would remember the next time we played them that, you know, this is what I saw at this time, but I would take the time on the flights from city to city. We'd get our scouting reports, and it would come in a binder, and I kind of would take that time to look over those scouting reports, and then eventually it got to an iPad, and it made it a little bit easier, so you could, you know, kind of put video with the scouting report. So that made it a little bit easier to figure those guys out. There was a pretty volatile time. We were involved in a brawl with the Philadelphia Phillies. It was a year after they had won the World Series. Or no, maybe it was a year after we won the World Series, and we had beat them in the playoffs. So it was kind of a rivalry that had started, you know, at the time, and one of our pitchers had hit Shane Victorino, who was an outfielder for the Phillies at the time, and kind of emotions were kind of running high, you know, a little bit, just because we'd, you know, kind of got this little rivalry going. But our pitcher Ramon Ramirez had hit Victorino, and Victorino kind of acted like he was going to go out and charge the mound. And I was always taught that you never let the guy get to your pitcher. You always protect your pitcher. So as soon as I saw him take a step towards the mound, I ran out and got in front of him and was between the mound and home plate. And I was jumping up and down, just looking for anybody that was going to come at me, because there was a guy on second base behind me, and I was facing the plate, so I was kind of had my head on a swivel, you know, trying to see, you know, what was about to happen. And then this guy came from behind me. Victorino never really charged the mound, but I was out there, you know, jumping up and down, looking all around. And so I guess both sides decided it was time to, you know, clear the benches. And I saw the guy coming from behind me. Placido Polanco was his name. And anyway, I saw him coming from behind me. I ducked down, and I had him on my shoulder, and I really didn't know what to do with him at the time. He was on my shoulder, and everybody came in, and me and the other guy, the catcher from the other team, from the Phillies, we ended up on the bottom of the pile together, just kind of hanging out. So we were just kind of talking, not throwing any punches or anything, and all the action was kind of happening up above us. So anyway, I don't know that I started the brawl, but anyway, I kind of ended up on the bottom of the pile with the catcher from the other team, just kind of chit-chatting a little bit, and anyway, it didn't last too long, and we got separated. I got ejected. The Victorino got ejected. A couple other players got ejected because I think one of our coaches got hit. Anyway, it was a big ordeal, but at the time, that was one of my only handful of brawls that I was involved in during my professional career. Everybody loves a brawl. I mean, baseball, sometimes there's not a whole lot of action going on, so I guess we brought the action that day. I mean, you're around the same guys for 8 months every single day, you know. Spring training starts in February, second week in February, and the season can last until November, you know, if you make the playoffs and go to the World Series or whatever. So you're around the same 20, 30, or, you know, with trainers and coaches, you're around the same 45, 50 people every single day for 8 months, you know, with no break. It's every single day. I mean, there's maybe 5 days off during the season, you know, so, and I mean, tensions run high, you know, on the field or in the clubhouse with just the people you're around, and then you're playing the same, if you're, you know, you're playing the same teams in your division, so something that comes up, you know, one game can carry over, you know, you may play them, you know, the next series or a couple series later, you know, those things can kind of linger on, you know, and but that's the beauty of a baseball season, I guess. Initially made my big league debut in 2005. I got called up with Baltimore in 2005, and I was up for a couple weeks because Javi Lopez had gotten hurt. He was the starting catcher for the Orioles at the time. You know, I was a big fan of his. He caught for the Braves for a long time, and I was a big Braves fan growing up. But anyway, he had gotten hurt. I'd gotten called up for the first time with Baltimore in 2005. Then it took about 4 more years for me to get back to the big leagues. I was playing with, I'd gotten released, and then I got picked up by the Giants in 2008. Played the rest of the minor league season with them in 2008, and then 2009 went to spring training with the Giants, and was playing really well first month of the season, and then I got called up to the Giants. We were in it was Seattle, and one of my favorite players, or my favorite player growing up, was Will Clark, and he wore number 22 for the Giants. Mississippi guy, you know, played at Mississippi State. So I got called up. I jumped out we were playing a day game in Seattle, and I got called up, jumped on the plane, made it to Seattle. I was playing that day, and I walked in the clubhouse in Seattle, and the number 22 with Whiteside was hanging in my locker. And I'll never forget it, and that was one of the coolest moments of my baseball career, was when I walked in the clubhouse and saw number 22 hanging in my locker with, you know, my name on it, because, you know, that was obviously Will Clark's number 2. So anyway, got called up then and finished out the season 2009. 2010 went to spring training, was fighting for a position on the team, made the opening day roster, which was the first time I'd ever done that, making my first big league opening day roster. So I was on the team from day one, you know, from opening day until we eventually won the World Series in 2010. So that was, I mean, not only, you know, me making my first opening day roster that year was you know, being on the team the entire year, and you know, just seeing it through and making it to the World Series and eventually winning the World Series that year. Like we were talking about before, there's very few people that, you know, a very small percentage that make it to the big leagues, and then even smaller. There are guys that played in the big leagues for 15 or 20 years that never got a chance to play in the World Series, much less win a ring, and something I'm very thankful for. You know, just to be a part of that, because I really never dreamed of being on a World Series champion team. You know, just getting to the big leagues and trying to stick around. Was a pretty big goal of mine, you know, and then just to be a part of something like that, something I never really dreamed of, and was something I'll never forget. Just to be a part of it, of something that special. We played the Texas Rangers when we won the World Series in 2010. We won it in. I think it was 5-6 games. We ended up winning it in Texas, so I had some family there, which was nice for them to be able to be there. You know, but I'll never forget the moment we actually won it, because nobody really gave us a chance. We were the underdogs the whole playoffs. We came back and won a few games we probably should not have won, beat some teams we shouldn't have beat, but that's how baseball is. You get on you kind of get a good thing going there, and we kind of got on a roll there towards the end of the season, and we were playing good baseball at the right time, and ended up finishing it up. Our closer was on the mound. Brian Wilson was on the mound, and he struck out Nelson Cruz for the final out of the World Series, and then we stormed the field, and pretty cool moment from a guy from New Albany, Mississippi. We stayed over in Texas that night after the World Series. We stayed over in Texas, and then that next day we flew back to San Francisco, and there were they had fire trucks on they're on the tarmac there as we pulled up, and they were kind of showering over the plane as we pulled up, and then as we came, the airport in San Francisco is about a 25-minute drive from the ballpark, so you got to drive directly through, right downtown. People were lined up on the sides of the streets. Just the welcoming we got when we came back to San Francisco, and then the parade a couple of days later was unbelievable. Just to see, they had us on old trolley cars. They had two members of the team and our families on the trolley car, and we went down the streets of San Francisco, and every time we got to an intersection and you could see the streets going either direction, it was, as far as you could see, there were people lined up, and people hanging from the light poles, and it was just a huge celebration, because the Giants had moved to San Francisco from New York in '56, and there had never been a championship in San Francisco. They had played in the World Series in 2010 and lost in Game 7, and that was a big heartbreaker, and I'm not real sure that they had been back to the playoffs since then. So in 2010, it was just I think it was just all those. No, I guess it was 90. Let's see, they played in the World Series in '89, and then in 2002. But just being that close and never winning it, and then just the people that had been fans for so long, to see us win it and bring it back to San Francisco was unbelievable. Since I retired from playing, the first 4 years I retired. Let's see, my last season playing was 2014. That next year, I had signed a minor league contract to go play with the Braves. At some point, I think it may have been December, the general manager from the Giants had called me and asked me if I would want to come back and be a part of the staff. There was some kind of shuffling around with the coaching staff in San Francisco, and he asked me if I would want to come back and help out with the catchers and catching the bullpen. And I had kind of been, trying to wonder, wondering what my next step would be. I was 34 at the time, which I felt like I had a couple more years I could play, but didn't really know at the time what I was going to be doing. So I retired from playing. I took that job, and those next 4 years I helped out with the catchers on the big league team, traveled around with the team, and I called in the bullpen. Let's see, that was 15, 16, 17, 18, and then the last couple years I have been like a traveling, a roving catching instructor, which is a guy that kind of travels around to the minor league teams and just checks in on the minor league catchers. And I really enjoyed that, being it was kind of an eye opener being back in the minor leagues and just seeing how the game was played. A little bit slower, a few more mistakes, but at the same time, that's why I was there, was to kind of help out with those things and to watch the catchers and be there for those catchers and I enjoyed that, just seeing those guys and seeing those guys try to live out their dreams. It is tough. It is a lot of long bus rides. It's just as well. It's not as long. It's 140 games instead of 162 games. But you don't get there are no days off, pretty much. And like I said, a lot of long bus rides. As you make it up and as you move up the ladder and make it to AAA, sometimes there's you have to fly and there's a 3 a.m. wake up calls because you got to be the first flight out and that kind of thing, So travel in the minor leagues is not the it's not great, but that's what you have to do. You have to overcome those things to get to where you want to be. 8 years in the minor league, 8, 9, 10, 9 or 10 years in the minor leagues. So I rode on my fair share of the buses. They would put us up in hotels. We would, we would play a series, so it would be 3 or 4 game series, and then we would either go, we'd come back home or go to the next road. So most of the time it'd be like maybe a 10-day road trip, or 9-10 days on the road, and then 9-10 days back at home, and then kind of just back and forth. I played for the Shorebirds. I played for the Frederick Keys. I played for, this is just for Baltimore. The Tides, the Grizzlies. The ones that I coached for, or we had one. It's AA with the Giants. It's the Richmond Flying Squirrels. So they are the Flying Squirrels. I know there are some pretty kind of outrageous ones now that have come about, but I think the craziest one that I've been associated with maybe is Flying Squirrels. When I played in Savannah, they were called the Sand Gnats, and it was I tell people all the time, the hottest game I ever played in my professional career was in Savannah, Georgia, I think it may have been 4th of July, and they were called the Sand Gnats because there's these gnats that just come up and they'll get on your face, and especially if you're sweating, they'll just stick to you. But anyway, they're flying all around. But anyway, during that game, it was a day game, dry as a bone outside, humidity, but clear sky, and I looked down and my feet I just had mud all over my feet. And it was so hot that I was sweating through my shoes, that all the sweat was going down, it had gone through my shoes, and I just had mud caked up on my shoe, on both of my spikes. And I was going back between innings and just cleaning the mud off of my shoes. But I tell folks all the time that was the hottest game I ever played in. It was low A ball for the Orioles, and I was on the Shorebirds, and we were playing the Savannah Sand Gnats. When I first made it to the big leagues, I got there and I made my debut in Yankee Stadium, and I didn't really feel like I belonged, because I was playing against guys that I watched on TV. Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez, and those guys were the first guys that stepped in the box when I made my debut, and I was like, I can remember to myself sitting back there thinking, I don't belong here. I've watched these guys play on TV, and I'm from small town New Albany, Mississippi, But I got sent back down a couple weeks later, and I told myself then, I was like, if I ever make it back to the big leagues, then I'm going to know that I've worked just as hard as these other guys to get here and know that I belong. And for I think that's cool for kids to be able to see around here is for them to be able to see that somebody from your hometown has accomplished a dream that they had. It may be crazy and people may doubt you or whatever, but just seeing somebody from here, make it is I think could mean a lot to somebody. From what I can remember about the draft is it was online, and this was in 2001. So we were not anywhere near, we didn't have near the technology we have now. We weren't on our phone following the draft or anything like that. So, and we did not have internet at the time, but we got internet and we got a computer set up in our living room, so we could follow the draft. Back then it was 50. There were 50 rounds of the Major League Draft, and which now it's all televised in the first days on it's on ESPN or whatever. But back then we had to get the internet just to be able to know or just to follow the draft, and then the first round came up, second round, third round, fourth round, whatever. And we're just kind of sitting there. I had one of my buddies, one of my college teammates, he was there with me, and my family was there. And Baltimore came up in the 6th round, and that's when I heard my name called. Was like the 176th selection in the 2001 draft by the Baltimore Orioles. 6th round pick is Eli Whiteside. And that was obviously a big moment for me, just living out, I was going to be able to live my dream, not knowing at the time exactly what was all going to be involved, but I was going to get the opportunity to try to make a living playing baseball, and I thought that's what I always wanted to do. They sent us to Sarasota, Florida for a little while, and then I was fortunate enough to be able to, just because I was a college draft guy and they were kind of short on catchers at the time, I got to kind of skip a couple levels. So I went straight to single A, low A ball in Delmarva, Maryland, which is up by Delaware. So I went from New Albany, Mississippi to Delmarva, Maryland, right on the coast, and had never really pretty much been out of New Albany. I traveled around this area, but not nowhere that far. So it was a whole new life experience for me. I was 21. It was after my junior year at Delta State. One of the more memorable moments I had in my career, and pretty fortunate to be able to be behind the plate for one of these. And I mean, there's guys that have caught in the big leagues for a long time that never had the opportunity to be behind the plate for a no-hitter. But it was July 10th, 2009. I was catching Jonathan Sanchez, and I was not even supposed to be behind the plate that night. Benji Molina, the starting catcher, his wife was they were having a baby that day. So I had to start behind the plate that night, and Jonathan Sanchez he was a starting pitcher, had been struggling a pretty good bit, and then they sent him to the bullpen, and this was his first start after being sent to the bullpen to pitch out of the bullpen. So it was his first start, and we're playing the San Diego Padres, a team that we both knew really well, being in our division. He had really good stuff that night, and I really did not even realize that we had a no-hitter going until there was a first base runner, and he had a perfect game going until I think it was the 6th or 7th inning. A guy hit a chopper to third base, and the ball hit the lip of the grass, and the guy Jose Uribe made an error. They gave him an error, so that was the first time we had a base runner. And I really didn't, just being so locked into the game, I didn't really realize that we had a no-hitter going until I looked in the dugout, because I look in the dugout to get the running game signs, whether to, tell the pitcher to throw the first base or slide step or whatever. I looked to the manager, and that was the first time I looked over to Bochy the whole game. So that's when I realized, I was like, well, we got a no-hitter going, So it was just from that point on, I'm realizing that there's a no-hitter going, and that kind of just brought the intensity up just a little bit. And anyway, we get to the ninth inning. There's one out. Edgar Gonzalez comes up to the plate. We got a 3-1 count, and I just I called a fastball, down and away. We're up, I think 9 or 10-1 at the time. So we're just trying to get we got the game in hand. We're just trying to, finish up the no-hitter. And he hits the ball as far as he could hit one without hitting it out of the ballpark. He hit one 399 feet to dead center field, and Aaron Rowan goes up with one out in the ninth inning. He goes up and makes a home run robbing catch at the wall. He saves the no-hitter. Next guy strikes out, and ball game's over. And I had just caught a no-hitter. I'd caught a couple no-hitters in the minor leagues before, but obviously not in the big leagues. I think it was very early in my big league career. I had not caught that many games in the big. I think I'd caught maybe 20 or so games in the big leagues at that time. So one of the more memorable moments I had in my playing career, and one of the coolest moments was that was the first. He was Puerto Rican, so that was the first time his dad had seen him pitch in person. Like, his dad was at the game that night, and seeing his dad come down on the field and him hugging his dad, that's something I'll never forget. It was pretty awesome. Crazy story. My first at bat in the big leagues was against Randy Johnson, who was he won 300 games, Hall of Fame pitcher. So my first at bat was in Yankee Stadium against Randy Johnson. I grounded into a double play. Come around, so many years later, let's see, 2000, it was 2010 maybe, he had won his 300th game with the Giants, and he pitched the last game of the season for the Giants that year in San Diego, and I was the catcher. So my first at bat was off Randy Johnson, and his last pitch he ever threw in a big league game was to me. I was the catcher in that game. So that was something that was pretty cool. He had like a long mullet. Yeah. He's 6'10", left-handed pitcher. Family has always been huge for me. Me and Amy have been together since I was a freshman in high school. We met at it was W.P. Daniel then. We met, we were crossing. She's 2 years older than I am, but we would meet in the hallway, and that's that's pretty much where we met, was in the hallway. We'd pass each other. It was between our first or second class in the morning. We'd pass each other in the hallway, and I would always look at her and smile and go on. I was real shy. Anyway, we started dating in high school, and she went to Northeast, and I went to Delta State, and she came to Delta State, and we've been together ever since. We got two boys, Whit and Wake. They're 10 and 8 now. They were both interesting stories. They were both born the years that we won the World Series. So Whit was born in 2010, and then Wake was born in 2012, and I was a part, not all year, but I was there when we won the World Series in 2012. So they were both born, and I have a ring from each year that they were, a World Series ring from each year they were born, which is pretty cool. But I've just been on the road so much that, Whit, he's more into art, and he plays the piano, and he's more into that kind of thing. My youngest son Wake, he's more into sports and athletic, and he's played travel soccer this past year, and going to get into baseball, I think, this year. And that's just one thing with me being on the road so much. I have not been able to be be home, to be, to be their coach, or to kind of be out in the yard with them as much, playing ball. And that's kind of what I look forward to now, is being there for them, and being their coach, and helping kids out in this area.